Hello and welcome back to the second part of this special edition of Reporters. Today we're talking about Asian jihadism. Just how much of a hold does Al-Qaeda have in Southeast Asia? Well, joining us to do that is France 24's Cyril Payen, who's been speaking to some of the people responsible for terrorist attacks in the region, including the Bali bombings in 2002. We'll be speaking to him in a moment. First, though, let's take a look at his report.
Al-Qaeda's Asian branch relies very much on closed networks and family clans. There's the rank and file, but there are also the leaders. For the first time, one of them, the brother of the Bali bombing mastermind, agrees to talk.
One day I asked my brothers to tell me where I should go for jihad, perhaps Afghanistan or Southeast Asia. Their answer was that jihad could be anywhere that Islam needs to be defended. Then they ordered me to go to the Philippines, so I went there to extend the holy war.
But it would have been a good time. The question is, would you have been part of the Bali bombing?
Yeah, of course.
Ali Fazi would have gladly planted bombs in Bali, but his task was to open training camps in the jungles of the southern Philippines for the cause and the expansion of international jihad. It was here that the Bujinka operation in the 90s was planned. The goal was to crash several aircrafts in Manila during the Pope's visit. The same thinking is behind the September the 11th attacks. It's here too that America secretly fought extremists on a second front against the Abu Sayyaf group.
Abu Sayyaf has been considered an international terrorist organization. They have been receiving during the past, in their early stages, support from the Al-Qaeda. No less than the brother-in-law of Osama bin Laden came here to establish their cells. They have links with the Jama'ah Islamiyah, which was initially conceived in Indonesia, and most of their operatives are from Southeast Asia.
We head inside an Islamic ghetto in the slum outside Manila, the capital city. In the Philippines too, the war against terrorism has obtained results. Most of the Abu Sayyaf leaders have been killed. Some of them have been buried in a mass grave and haven't been forgotten.
I buried them like martyrs.
Yes, there are martyrs.
There are heroes who have been killed in cold blood. They were given no mercy. It's exactly as if a man was shot on his knees with his hands tied behind his back. It's not human. The Filipinos will never let us be rich or educated. We will never be allowed to live in peace. We are oppressed because we are Muslims. We can't do anything about it. You have the proof of our misery in front of you.
A general feeling of being discriminated against. The main reasons why a group of Abu Sayyaf kidnappers are considered heroes. The roots of a profound misunderstanding too.
The Americans can say what they want. They say they've won the war. Very well, let them talk. We know deep inside that they're all liars.
In order to find the last link of the Asian chain of Al-Qaeda, we have to come back to Pakistan, at the same place where we started our story, in Abbottabad. It's here, during a classified operation on January the 25th, 2011, that the most wanted fugitive in Southeast Asia was captured, 4 months before bin Laden. Abdul Ghani, better known as Umar Patek.
Umar Patek had been one of the Bali bombers. He'd been a leading member of Jama'ah Islamiyah. He had helped set up the training academy in Mindanao after it became no longer viable to have a camp on the Afghan-Pakistan border. So he's a instrumental figure in all of them. And he was in contact with Pakistanis in Jakarta who were clearly Al-Qaeda couriers. In August 2010, he left Indonesia on a fake passport with a real Pakistani visa and got to Lahore, and from Lahore eventually got to Abbottabad, the town where Osama bin Laden was killed.
The Americans, they say it's a coincidence. He was caught in Abbottabad.
That coincidence? Maybe. Maybe. Umar Patek is the one of the very strong evidence of the linkage of terrorist network in Indonesia with Al-Qaeda. For me, there are linkage, the arresting of Umar Patek and uncovering of the safe house of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan.
The globalization of jihad and the franchising of Al-Qaeda may also have been the trap which he fell into. A thread in the spiderweb of extremism which could have led to Osama bin Laden after a hunt lasting 10 years. So now, what is left from this network? This man presents himself as the chief of the new generation.
You know, defenders of Islam have always existed in our history. In the history of Islam, there are only men who, across time, decided to stand up and fight and gave everything they had in order to protect our religion from attackers. All through history, we have always been the weakest, the oppressed, the most persecuted, us Muslims. For example, the Persians were crushed by the Romans, or more recently, during the Christian Crusades. It's normal and obvious that some heroic figures should stand up to defend us.
When was the last time you met him? It was in Pakistan, or?
I've never met Osama bin Laden. I traveled to Pakistan, but not for that. That's all I have to say.
The Americans, they claim that you met him.
Jadi media Amerika juga mengklaim biasanya.
I want to pray first. Kita sambung nanti.
Abdul Rahim Bashir is too clever to respond to provocations. He knows perfectly well when it's time to leave.
He's the one person that we know of who was actually working with Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan with the Meteor propaganda unit after, up until the US invasion of Afghanistan, I think. So he's got the international contacts. He's very smart. He's also very careful. So there isn't a single thing that he's done in Indonesia for which he could be criminally charged. And I think he's someone to watch.
Of course. He's a double agent. When he travels, it's not only for business. He also travels to get some new recruits for the organization. And when he goes to Pakistan, it's mostly to expand his network, as well as to keep in touch with his contacts abroad.
We are fighting because we are free men who can't sleep under oppression. That's the message from the Al-Qaeda leader that resounded through the minds of thousands of jihadists across Asia. But will this rhetoric survive him? What will be the legacy of the man who had the power to levy an army of anonymous volunteers in order to challenge the West?
I think that the determination to go after the United States and its allies, which was his contribution to the jihadi world, is now possibly going to come back to Southeast Asia. So I think we could see, at least temporarily, an effort to hit back at international targets in a way that we really haven't seen here since the hotel bombings in 2009.
It's only in their mind, not in our mindset. We cannot predict it. Nobody can predict, because if somebody want to suicide, somebody want to do bombing, it's only in their mindset, not in the, law enforcement or everybody can make prediction, but always wrong.
The heirs of jihad have grown up nurtured by glorious tales of war and adventure from the previous generation, veteran mujahideen from Afghanistan. Those who had left their villages in Indonesia or the Philippines to defend their faith against infidels. Now many are waiting in the wings, ready to carry the torch.
Jadi pertempuran antara Islam dengan non-Islam dengan kafir.
The war between Islam and the infidels will go on until Judgment Day. The future of humanity is in the hands of the Muslim people. This is us, the Muslims, who are going to lead the world. It's written in the Quran. Then the Islamic Empire will spread all around the world and all the wars will end, the infidels will disappear from the planet, and finally, the judgment will arrive.
It's finished.
When US President Barack Obama announced that Osama bin Laden had been assassinated, many welcomed the news with relief. But there were yet others who mourned and swore to avenge his death.
Well, the journalist who very much risked his personal safety to bring that report to us is Cyril Payet, and he's here with me now in the studio. Thanks for joining us, Cyril, and for bringing us your report. Now, let's start by talking about Umar Patek. Now, he's one of the most wanted terrorists in Southeast Asia. He's the mastermind behind the Bali bombings in 2002. Now, bizarrely, he was arrested in Pakistan, not only in Pakistan, but in Abbottabad, the very town where Osama bin Laden was killed just 3 months later. Explain to us what exactly is going on there.
Well, it raises a lot of questions about the links between Southeast Asia and the Al-Qaeda. What is quite interesting is that this capture on the 25th of 2011 was kept very secret, confidential. We very barely heard about it a few weeks after it happened. We don't know exactly where he is physically now, but the thing which remains is that is really strong evidence, a physical evidence of the key, the link between Southeast Asia, the franchise of Al-Qaeda in Southeast Asia, and the link to Al-Qaeda in Abbottabad. Now, what we don't know are the circumstances of this arrest. Was it a long track, as people say in some circles, in intelligence circles, American, Western intelligence circles, that it was a long track coming back to 2010, which just finished in Abbottabad with Umar Patek and the final capture, as we know, in May of Osama bin Laden, or was it his capture who finally, because he was interrogated by, I believe, by the CIA in Pakistan, that made the link to Osama bin Laden. So this is still a question, but physically he was the most wanted man in Southeast Asia, a man who has been a fugitive for 10 years, traveling all around Asia, and he was caught 3 months before bin Laden in a very, very same small city of Abbottabad.
So there is a chance he might have led the Americans to Osama bin Laden's hideout. All right, now talking more generally, since 2002, since the Bali bombings and other terrorist attacks in Indonesia and the Philippines, authorities there have been quite successful, haven't they, in really clamping down on these Al-Qaeda networks. Does the death of bin Laden mean that there might be more people ready to martyr themselves for his death?
Well, most of the experts on this question keep on saying now that it's really high alert again, in the short term at least, because there will be a reaction, as we see in the film, that people are very it created the capture of bin Laden, the elimination of bin Laden, the way it was done with the lack of proof generates some anger, some sympathy for the man, anger, and maybe rejuvenate the feeling. So we can expect some soft target being attacked again, but in the long term, it's maybe the end the big problem with Al-Qaeda, and we will come back mostly at local targets and local bombings with local jihadists targeting local police or military. But there is crucially a division among the jihadists, the people who fight to defend the Muslim, as they say, to target foreigners. They are not very all on the same line for this.
All right, Cyril Payen, we'll have to leave it there, but many thanks indeed for talking to us today here on Reporters. Well, that's it for this edition of Reporters. If you'd like to see Cyril Payen's report in full, do go to our website, www.france24.com, and we'll be back at the same time next week.